This is a short story produced by StoryStream called The Zombie Chronicles, Idaho Falls, created by Christopher A. Lee and narrated by Brian. Thank you for listening to this story. If you could leave the name of the city you are listening from, it might randomly get picked for our Zombie Snapshot series. And if you enjoyed this short story, please like and subscribe to the channel. The wind moved strangely that night. It wasn't just the breeze slipping through the cottonwood trees lining South Boulevard, or the hum of the Snake River a few blocks away. It felt like the whole world had shifted. Logan Barrett stood on his back porch, cigarette burning low between his fingers, watching the sky over Ammon flicker with an odd, distant glow. For a moment, it reminded him of wildfire smoke. But this was August, and the air smelled clean. Too clean. Inside, the radio crackled low on the kitchen counter. Still unconfirmed reports out of Beijing and Delhi. Widespread panic in some districts. The World Health Organization has issued a travel advisory for Southeast Asia. Repeat, this is not a global health emergency, but citizens are advised to. Logan stubbed the cigarette into the clay ashtray he'd made back in high school shop class and stepped back into the kitchen. The rifle was still laid out on a towel atop the counter, bolts cleaned and oiled, magazine emptied earlier at Doug's Shootin' Sports during his weekly trip to Yukon. He'd always been a routine guy. Clean the Remington every Friday night, stock up at Sportsman's Warehouse off Pencherry Drive, and finish with takeout from Jalisco's or City Bagels if he was feeling like carbs. Tonight, though, he hadn't eaten. "You hear that?" Rachel asked, leaning against the archway to the living room, her arms folded tight across her hoodie. "They're saying over 100,000 people are dead. India's shutting down airports." Logan glanced at the TV. A muted anchor mouthed panicked words while footage rolled behind her. Smoke columns, ambulances in circles, blurry clips of people being tackled by what looked like rioters. But no blood, no violence. Just chaos carefully cropped out of frame. "They're always exaggerating," Logan said, but his voice lacked weight. Rachel didn't answer. She was scrolling her phone. Her dark hair fell forward, half shadowing her face. Then she froze. "Logan, come look at this!" He stepped beside her. The video was grainy, vertical, filmed by someone screaming in what sounded like Korean. The camera shook violently as it caught the edge of a street. A man in a white shirt lay crumpled in the road, blood leaking from under him. A small crowd stood nearby, filming with their phones. Then, with bones visibly out of joint and a neck twisted unnaturally to the left, the man stood. He moved like a spider caught in glue, jerking, halting, but unstoppable. He lunged at a bystander, and the phone tumbled to the pavement mid-scream. Rachel shut the phone off. "That's fake," she muttered. "Has to be fake." Logan said nothing. Earlier that day, Rachel had worked her shift at the Walgreens on 17th Street. A man came in demanding antibiotics and gauze, said he was bit by some whacked-out dude near the river. She'd offered to call the ER, but he stormed off. Her manager said to forget it. She didn't. Logan had picked up propane at Cal Ranch off Hit Road, and the cashier told him her cousin in Boise had just gotten off work because the whole mall had closed from a riot. He'd chuckled at the time. Idaho didn't riot. We were the place people went to escape riots. But now, as the night deepened, Idaho Falls didn't feel so far from the edge. Around 2 a.m., the power flickered. Logan sat up in bed, groggy. The ceiling fan stuttered, stopped, then came back. The TV in the corner turned itself on. Just static. Rachel stirred beside him. "Was that the power?" He nodded. Then the screen flashed red, and a tone began to play. The kind of tone that vibrated inside your skull and made your teeth clench. "This is not a test. The Bonneville County Emergency Management Office has issued a stay-at-home alert for all Idaho Falls residents. Remain indoors. Lock all windows and doors. Await further instructions." They both sat up now, fully awake. "What the hell?" Rachel whispered. "They've never used that frequency. Not since—" Then came the sound. Helicopters, low, fast, and loud, screaming west across the sky toward Shelley. Then sirens, dozens of them. Fire trucks, ambulances, police, and then, boom. An orange fireball lit the night sky in the direction of the Chevron station off Ammon Road. Logan's bedroom window rattled in its frame. Rachel grabbed his hand. Her skin was cold. We need to go. To where? He didn't know why he asked it. It felt like the right thing to say. Like if he kept asking questions, it meant things were still normal. Then they heard the first scream. They moved fast, but not panicked. Logan threw on his boots, pulled his Glock from the nightstand, and chambered around. Rachel grabbed the rifle. They kept go bags in the closet, mostly earthquake kits they'd put together during that weird preparedness phase after the 2017 Soda Springs quake. Flashlights, granola, water, radio, batteries, barely enough to matter. At the front window, Logan peeked out through the blinds. The street was lit in amber hues from the burning gas station. 2 houses down, a woman was running barefoot in her nightgown. Her hair stuck to her face. Her arms were flailing. She wasn't screaming words, just pure guttural terror. Something followed her. At first he thought it was a man, but it moved wrong, too fast. Its arms didn't swing right, and when it caught her, it didn't tackle her to the ground. It fell with her, mouth open, teeth flashing, hands clawing. Her screams were wet now. Rachel turned away. By sunrise, Idaho Falls had changed. The TV tower on Northgate Mile had gone dark. Radio stations looped static or automated warnings. Cell signals dropped one by one. Smoke columns rose from near Winco and Walgreens. Cars were stalled across East 17th Street, doors open, windows shattered. A body lay slumped against the Dutch Broers coffee kiosk, face hidden, one shoe missing, and still no word from the government, no explanation, no confirmation, only fear and questions, and the sudden, unbearable silence of the world that had existed just 12 hours ago. Logan placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder. We need to go somewhere defensible. Not here. Not in town. Rachel nodded. Where? He glanced toward the mountains. Shelley, maybe, or Rigby. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere with trees. Behind them, something thumped against the back door. Once. Twice. They turned together. Rifle raised, pistol drawn. Chapter 2. The sound of breaking glass. The thump came again. Harder this time. Rachel stood frozen near the hallway entrance, rifle clutched tight against her chest. Logan edged toward the back door, pistol raised, the sights trembling slightly in his grip. The old wooden frame groaned as whatever was on the other side pressed against it. Harder now, slower, like it didn't know how to open it. Just that something inside was alive. He held up a hand to Rachel. Stay here. She didn't argue. Another crash. Then the glass pane in the center of the door spiderwebbed and burst inward. A pale hand reached through, bloody raw, its nails torn down to the beds. Logan didn't hesitate. 2 shots rang out, deafening in the small kitchen. The body behind the door dropped with a sickening thud. He took a breath, then another, and stepped outside. The man lying on the deck wore a polo shirt from Dick's Sporting Goods. His chest was soaked in red, his head split from the impact of the second shot. But it was the smell that hit Logan hardest. Something foul, sweet, and unnatural, like meat left in a warm car. Rachel came to the doorway behind him. You killed him. He was already dead, Logan muttered. They didn't bury the body. They didn't have time. In the distance from the direction of Freeman Park, they could hear more sirens, and a low, continuous horn, like the emergency alert blaring from some distant loudspeaker. Rachel stepped down into the backyard and pointed toward the sky. Look! A plane, one of those small regional jets from the Idaho Falls Regional Airport, was flying low. Too low. One of its engines coughed a burst of smoke. It wobbled hard to the right and disappeared behind the roofline. Seconds later, a dull explosion rocked the neighborhood. Jesus Christ, Logan whispered. Where do we go? We have to get out of the city, Rachel said, eyes wide. Now. We'll take the back streets, cut down Hit Road, then east toward Shelley. I'm not leaving unarmed. You're not unarmed. I mean more. They looked at each other, the same idea forming. Doug's shooting sports in Yukon, their usual spot. If they could get there, they could stock up. Ammo, parts, hell, maybe even food. They locked eyes, no more talking, just action. They packed fast. Logan slipped the Glock into a drop holster. Rachel threw spare rounds into her jacket pocket. They loaded 2 backpacks with water bottles, a flashlight, protein bars, and a battery-powered radio that was still hissing static. When they stepped outside, the neighborhood was silent, eerily so. The usual chirping birds were gone, the early morning joggers, the sound of distant sprinklers or lawnmowers. Nothing. Then came a scream. Down the street, a figure bolted out of a side yard, barefoot, bleeding, wearing a pair of hospital scrubs. A woman. She ran into the road and collapsed on her knees, hands over her face, shaking. Logan took a step toward her, but Rachel yanked him back. "Look!" Behind the woman, staggering with broken limbs and a twisted gait, came two others. One was in a white tank top, chest caked in dried blood. The other's jaw hung open unnaturally, like it had been dislocated. Their skin was gray, their eyes glassy. They didn't speak. They didn't moan. They just moved forward. The woman on the street screamed again, but didn't get up in time. The two things fell on her, fast and violent. She didn't stand a chance. Rachel turned away. "We can't help her." "I know." They slipped through backyards and hopped fences, trying to avoid the main roads. Every once in a while, they'd hear a gunshot, a crash, a far-off siren quickly silenced. Something terrible was unfolding across Idaho Falls, and no one seemed to be in control. At 25th East, just before the turn toward Lincoln Road, they saw a pileup. 6 or 7 cars crumpled together at an intersection, glass shattered everywhere. One of them was still running, its headlights pointed into a gutter. No driver inside. But the worst part was the blood. It smeared the concrete, it painted the windshield. One of the car doors swung lazily in the breeze. They crept around it. By the time they reached the old Cal Ranch parking lot, the sky had turned a dull orange. Smoke rose in the distance, columns stretching toward the heavens, thick and fast. Somewhere, a transformer blew, sending a crackle of sparks over the power lines. Rachel pulled Logan behind a truck as they spotted movement across the lot. 3 men, all armed, civilians. At least they looked like it. One had a hunting rifle slung over his shoulder. Another gripped a bat. The third held a shotgun and kept checking the entrance to the Hobby Lobby next door. Logan stepped out slowly, one hand up. "Hey, friendly!" The men spun, guns half raised. The oldest, maybe late 40s, beard and a green Boise State hoodie, gestured with the shotgun. "Don't come any closer." Rachel stepped up beside Logan. "We're not sick." The man studied them a moment, then nodded. "Sorry, everyone's on edge. My name's Brent. This is Tyler and Nate. We just got out of Fred Meyer before the fire started." "What's going on?" Logan asked. "Do you know?" "Nothing official. Some say it's chemical. Some say it's a virus. But I've seen people shot in the chest, dead on the ground, stand back up like nothing happened." Rachel glanced at Logan. "We saw it too." Brent looked around. "No one's coming to help us. Police are either dead or gone. Whatever this is, it's spreading fast." "Yukon's got a gun shop. Doug's," Logan said. "We're heading there." Brent nodded. "Smart. Stay off Woodruff. Too many cars. Use Holmes Avenue. Follow the canal road. Less traffic." Rachel asked, "What about ammo?" Brent opened his coat. 3 shells left. "We're all running low." They left the parking lot just before another explosion sounded behind them. The Cal Ranch storefront caught fire, glass shattering inward as smoke poured from the roof. Someone inside banged against the glass, over and over, until the thudding stopped. Rachel turned away. Logan kept walking. By the time they reached Holmes Avenue, the sun had broken through the smoke, just a dull amber disk in the sky. The wind smelled like ash and gasoline. Birds still hadn't returned. Rachel turned on the small radio again. It cracked, hissed, and then a voice came through. "To all residents of Bonneville County, remain indoors. Avoid contact with infected individuals. Reports confirm aggressive and violent behavior. Bodily fluids may be contagious." Then static, then the emergency tone, then silence. Logan looked down the street. "Shelley's that way," he muttered. "We'll figure out what the hell's happening once we get there." But as they turned the corner, they saw movement. Dozens of figures in the distance, shambling slowly along the street, some dragging legs, some hunched forward, all moving the same direction, toward them. Rachel raised the rifle. Logan drew his pistol. They didn't speak, only moved into the unknown. Chapter 3. The Lock Behind the Counter. The drive to Yukon was short, but it felt like a lifetime. Logan kept one hand on the wheel of the aging Ford Ranger, the other hovering near the pistol on his hip. Rachel sat stiffly in the passenger seat, rifle across her lap, scanning every intersection, every driveway, every person on the road, like they might suddenly lunge at the truck. The main route through Idaho Falls was choked with stalled vehicles and wreckage, so they cut across side roads, Holmes Avenue to East Iona Road, then north into the farm-lined flats that bled into Yukon. The world got quieter out here. More space, fewer people. And yet, that didn't feel like comfort anymore. It felt like exposure. Doug's Shootin' Sports sat off the road in a low brick building, tucked between a feed store and a Mormon church. The open sign still glowed red in the window, flickering slightly, but the parking lot looked like a war zone. Two trucks and a minivan were parked crooked across the gravel. One door hung open. Shell casings glinted in the dirt like seeds waiting to sprout. "Something went down here," Logan muttered, easing the truck to a stop. Rachel already had her hand on the door. "Let's move." Inside, the store was chaos, but organized chaos. A dozen people crowded around the counter, yelling over each other. The display cases, normally lined with pristine handguns and bolt-action rifles, were already half empty. Shotgun racks were nearly picked clean. The ammo shelf behind the register had a handwritten sign taped to it. "Limit 1 box per customer, no exceptions. Prices as marked, no holds." A gray-haired man in a flannel shirt, Doug himself or someone who worked for him, stood behind the counter with a revolver holstered at his hip and a .410 resting on a shelf within arm's reach. His hands were shaking, but his voice was firm. "No background check, no gun," he snapped. "That's the law. Don't like it. Call the governor." A heavy-set guy in camo shoved forward. "There is no law anymore, old man. You seen what's out there? That ain't meth heads, that's dead people walking. I don't care if they're dragons. If I sell without a background check, they'll pull my license and shut me down. You want your Mossberg? Fill out the form." Someone in the back of the room yelled, "You think they're still keeping records? My brother just shot his neighbor in Shelley. Guy bit him." The room boiled. Rachel leaned toward Logan. "This is about to go bad." "Yeah." They moved carefully, stepping around an overturned ammo display and a man sobbing quietly on the floor with a bandaged arm. Logan recognized a couple faces. Locals, maybe from the shooting range or from one of the weekend hunter safety workshops. He caught eyes with the man behind the counter. "Doug?" The guy nodded. "Logan, right? You and Rachel?" "We just need supplies," Logan said quickly. "Not looking to jump the line. Just tell us what you've got left." Doug's jaw tightened. "We got one Remington 870 pump left. Some are .45. A few boxes of 9mm. One AR, no optics, not cheap. Money's not a problem." "Good," Doug said, but his eyes flicked toward the angry crowd. "Because they're about to make it one." Tension snapped like a tripwire. The man in camo, the same one who'd been shouting earlier, grabbed a .22 from the rack and chambered around. "I'm not dying empty-handed," he growled. "Sell it to me or I'll take it." Everyone froze. Doug's hand dropped under the counter. Not fast, deliberate, like he'd rehearsed it before. "Son," he said softly, "put the rifle down. You don't get it. I have a family. I need something. We all need something." The man's hand twitched. Rachel raised her rifle. "Don't," she said. The man hesitated, eyes jumping to her, then to Logan, then to the others in the room, half of whom were now backing toward the walls. "I'm not the bad guy," he said, his voice cracking. "I believe you," Logan said, "but pull that trigger and someone else's family dies. And if they die screaming, that's on you." For one awful second, it felt like he'd do it anyway. But he didn't. The man lowered the rifle, handed it off, and turned away. Doug exhaled slowly. "I'll waive the background checks, just this once. But nobody leaves here without paying. Nobody." No one argued. 30 minutes later, the crowd had thinned. Some left with weapons, some with nothing. Some, like the woman who just wanted ammo for a gun she no longer had, left crying. Doug packed 3 boxes into a duffel bag and slid it across the counter. One AR-15, basic iron sights, one Remington 870, 2 boxes of .223, one of 9mm. That's all I can spare. Logan nodded. I appreciate it. Rachel looked at him. Why are you still here? Doug gave her a long, tired look. Because this is my store, and because this country survived worse than this once. My grandfather told me stories about the Depression, the Dust Bowl, the war. People tore each other apart then too, but we came back. Maybe we will again. Doug, Logan said, voice low, whatever this is, it's not going away. Doug glanced out the front window. A man was walking across the lot, slow, head cocked, one leg dragging behind him. A child's sneaker dangled from his right hand, like he'd picked it up and forgotten why. I know, Doug whispered. As they stepped out into the parking lot, Logan paused. The air felt heavier now, smokier. Every distant shape looked like a threat. He turned back toward the gun shop. Doug was locking the door behind them, his shotgun in hand. Be safe, he called. Rachel shouldered her pack. You too. Then they moved out, back down East 105th North, keeping to the tree lines, away from open ground. Logan didn't speak for a while. Then, you think he'll make it? Rachel didn't answer at first. Finally, she said no. But maybe someone will because of him. Chapter 4, Steel and Silence. The sound of the city died behind them like a long, painful breath. Logan guided the truck east, engine grumbling over cracked pavement and windblown debris. The city skyline faded in the rearview mirror, replaced by fields and irrigation ditches and the occasional lone silo. Rachel sat beside him, eyes scanning the open land beyond the windshield. There was no music, no radio, no GPS, just the hum of tires and the occasional gunshot echoing from miles behind. They didn't talk much, not after what they saw at Doug's, after what they saw on the road. Fires burned near Lincoln Road. A school bus was turned sideways across East 113th North, half its windows shattered. They had to swerve around a crashed police cruiser at the New Sweden Irrigation Canal, its doors flung open, the officer's hat lying in the middle of the road like a grave marker. Rachel finally broke the silence. We're going to run out of gas. Logan nodded. We'll find a siphon kit, hit farm equipment, abandoned pickups, anything. She looked at him. We need a place, not just for tonight, a place we can work from. He slowed at a dirt road, unmarked, overgrown, and nearly invisible if you didn't know where to look. I might know a place. 3 miles down the dusty road, surrounded by old wheat fields and rusting irrigation pumps, stood Graves Auto Salvage. The sign was rusted, nearly illegible. The place had closed 3 years ago, but Logan remembered it. He'd bought a transmission here once. It sat behind a massive fence of corrugated metal and chain link, with barbed wire curling across the top like a crown of thorns. Beyond the gate, piles of car parts and twisted frames lay in organized chaos. A small cement building, part office, part repair bay, stood at the center. Rachel leaned forward. That fence, 10 feet tall, steel, only one entrance, and no neighbors. Logan stepped out, scanning the horizon. The air smelled of dust and rust and old oil. Let's see if the place still breathes. The front gate was locked with a rusted chain, but a heavy crowbar from the truck toolkit made short work of it. Inside, the gravel crunched under their boots, and the only sounds were the breeze whipping across the wrecks and a loose tarp flapping on a distant roof. The main building's windows were boarded. Logan tested the door. It groaned open. The interior was dark, hot, and stale, but the bones were solid. A small office still had a working desk, cabinets, and an old fridge. The garage held a partially disassembled Jeep, a dusty toolbox, a gas generator with a cracked fuel line, and, most importantly, space. Space to work, store, sleep, space to think. Rachel explored the perimeter. No signs of recent activity. No busted locks, no broken glass, no blood. They looked at each other. This is it, Logan said. They spent the rest of the day fortifying. The front gate was welded shut from the inside with steel rods. Logan used scrap panels to patch holes in the fencing. Rachel cleared the sight lines around the building with a rusty machete they found inside a storage crate. They raided tool drawers, scavenging screwdrivers, bolts, nails, even an old welder that might work once they got the generator fixed. The junkyard became a fortress, one they didn't need to build, just reclaim. They found a water barrel with an intact hose line and started filling it from the hand pump well out back. The fridge didn't run, but they packed it with cold air bottles and created a makeshift cooling box for their meat and medical supplies. By sundown, the wind carried the sounds of distant panic, muffled gunshots, a scream, then silence. But out here, the world felt still. Rachel sat on the roof of the office with the Remington across her lap, watching the sun bleed into the fields. Logan handed her a can of cold beans and sat beside her. "We did good today," she said quietly. "First good decision in 2 days." She gave him a half smile. "Feels like we finally caught our breath." That breath was shattered by a howl. Not human, not animal, something in between. They climbed down, fast. Near the far end of the fence, between two crushed pickups, shadows moved. 3 of them, shuffling, dragging limbs. One walked directly into the metal fence, face first, and didn't stop. It pushed, moaned low and hollow, then clawed with broken fingers against the chain link. A second joined it, then a third. Rachel aimed her rifle through a small gap in the wall, but Logan lowered her hand. "Don't waste it. We can't let them hang around. They will, but they'll leave." "Why?" He pointed to the sun. "Zombies don't think. They move toward noise, light, smell. We're quiet now. We keep it that way. We're just shadows." They stayed in silence. The infected clawed at the fence for an hour. Then they wandered off like moths losing interest in a darkened flame. That night, they lay on sleeping bags in the office. Rachel couldn't sleep. She whispered, "How long can we stay here?" Logan stared at the ceiling. "As long as we have to. We need supplies, gas, food, medicine." "I know. We'll have to go back." He nodded. "Soon." Then after a long pause, "But we're not going back unprepared." Outside, a crow called once. In the far distance, a siren died. But within the walls of Graves Auto Salvage, silence took root. And for the first time since the world fell apart, Logan and Rachel had somewhere to belong. A fortress of rust and wire, a place to fight from. Chapter 5, A Man Named Hawthorne. Morning came in pale, smoky streaks across the Idaho sky. Rachel crouched inside the mechanic bay, packing her bag with precision. Med kit, flashlight, crowbar, 3 bottles of water, 1 can of chili, and exactly 12 shells for the Remington. Logan walked in, rolling his shoulders beneath the straps of a lightweight tactical vest he found behind the junkyard's locked tool room. "I've got a siphon kit and a map of the gas stations on Lincoln and First," he said. "If we hit Winco fast and bounce to Walgreens, we can get fuel and supplies and be back by sundown." Rachel zipped the bag shut. "Unless everything's already been picked clean, then we adapt." She looked at him. "You sure about this?" He nodded, but deep down, neither of them was sure about anything anymore. They drove a stripped-down Jeep Logan had been rebuilding from junkyard parts. It rattled, stuttered on hills, and had no driver's side window. But it moved. The silence of the countryside gave way to the broken hum of a ruined city. Idaho Falls was no longer a city. It was a grave with street signs. They bypassed main arteries like Woodruff and Holmes and cut down residential back roads near John Adams Parkway. Zombies moved in clusters here, 5 or 6 at a time, dragging themselves between ruined cars and burned lawns. Most ignored the Jeep. A few followed. None were fast. The real threat was the sound. Rachel whispered, "We don't fire unless we have to. 1 shot'll bring more." Logan pointed ahead. "There, Sinclair Station. Looks untouched." They coasted to a stop beside the pump. Rachel jumped out, siphon hose in hand. Logan stood guard, scanning windows, roofs, alleyways. They had just filled 1 gas can when they heard the crack. Not a gunshot, something subtler. A branch breaking, then a soft, deliberate whistle. Logan raised his pistol. "Hello!" A figure stepped out from behind the dumpster near the car wash. He was tall, lean like a scarecrow but solid. Wore a faded camo jacket, a wide-brimmed hat, and a long hunting knife strapped to his thigh. His beard was gray in streaks, and his eyes were sharp as broken glass. "Easy," he said. "I ain't bit. I ain't crazy, and I sure as hell ain't dead." Rachel kept her weapon lowered, but ready. "You live out here?" she asked. "More or less." He nodded at the surrounding neighborhood. "Been ghosting through rooftops and tree lines since this whole thing started. You two are the first live folks I've seen since Sunday." Logan frowned. "What's your name?" "Hawthorne." He said it like it was the only name that mattered. They sat behind the gas station, crouched around a cracked plastic table once used for car washes. Hawthorne pulled a torn topo map from his backpack, smoothed it out, and pointed to various locations. "I've been living in the greenbelt between Ammon and the Snake River. If you move quiet, stay high, avoid bridges and intersections, you can cross half this city without being seen." Rachel leaned in. "You been surviving alone?" Hawthorne nodded. "I was a wilderness instructor for 20 years. Backpacked from Salmon to Moab more times than I can count. Built a log cabin with no power tools. I don't need civilization." Logan raised a brow. "How do you feel about fences?" Hawthorne cracked a grin. "I love fences." They told him about Graves' auto salvage, the walls, the well, the plan to make it last. Hawthorne listened without interrupting, his eyes flicking between them like he was measuring something. "I'll come with you," he said finally. Logan hesitated. "You don't strike me as the team type." "I'm not." Hawthorne's expression hardened. "But you've got walls, and I've got skills, and I'd rather teach someone how to survive than wait around to be eaten alone." Rachel looked at Logan. They nodded. "All right," she said. "Let's get what we came for and head back before dark." They hit Winco next. The store was a mess of broken glass and half-looted shelves. Carts were overturned like someone had tried to barricade the entrance, and the smell, rotting meat, spilled milk, sweat, clung to the air like poison. But they found what they needed: canned food, water jugs, basic meds. And to Logan's surprise, one unopened box of .223 hidden behind bags of dog food. They were packing the last of it into the Jeep when the moaning started. Dozens of them, coming down the street, attracted by movement, by sound, by blood. Hawthorne dropped the last crate in and spun around, rifle raised. 30 seconds, top," he muttered. "Too many to shoot, too slow to run if we wait." Rachel jumped in the passenger seat. "Let's go!" Logan hit the gas. The Jeep tore through the parking lot, bouncing over medians and crunching glass under its wheels. Zombies reached out with broken fingers, scratching the paint. One clung to the rear bumper, teeth gnashing at air. Hawthorne leaned out the back with a homemade spear and skewered the thing through the face. It tumbled off like trash. They were 10 blocks out of the city before anyone spoke. "Still want to be part of the team?" Rachel asked. Hawthorne wiped blood off his sleeve. "More than ever." Back at the junkyard, they closed the gate behind them and bolted it shut. The silence returned, heavy and complete. They lit a small fire in a steel barrel and cooked a can of chili. Hawthorne stripped off his jacket and rolled up a sleeve to reveal a compass tattoo. "I figure you two might be green with the wilderness stuff," he said, "but you've got grit, and grit's what lasts." Logan passed him a plate. "We've got plans. Supply runs, recon, maybe help other survivors." Hawthorne looked out toward the field beyond the barbed wire. "Well then," he said, voice low and steady, "let's build something worth surviving for." And for the first time in days, the firelight didn't feel like a target. It felt like home. Chapter 6. Behind Closed Doors. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. The trio moved along East 25th Street, cutting through front lawns and side yards, their boots pressing into dried grass. They avoided the main roads. Holmes Avenue and Woodruff were overrun now, choked with stalled vehicles and gory memories. Residential back streets offered cover. But what they found inside the homes was worse. Rachel adjusted her grip on the Remington as they passed a crumbling mailbox with Henderson in faded letters. A stuffed bear hung from the post, its head slumped and one eye missing. Flies buzzed thick around it. Logan crouched at the front door of the first house. Glass broken, front door cracked open. He nodded to Hawthorne. We check, we clear, we move. Hawthorne grunted. Keep it tight. The first house was chaos incarnate. Couch cushions shredded, drawers pulled, blood smeared along the kitchen counter. A body, a man, late 30s, sat slumped against the fridge, gun still in hand, a dark hole beneath his chin. Logan stepped carefully around the drying pool beneath him. Food's gone, Rachel said from the pantry. Someone already cleaned this place out. Hawthorne moved toward the back room and peered inside. Bedroom's empty, no signs of struggle, just fear. They stepped out into the sunlight again, and it felt wrong. Too normal. The second house was worse. Logan opened the door slowly. It creaked loud enough to make them freeze. Inside, everything was spotless. The family photos still hung on the wall. Smiling faces, vacation shots at Yellowstone, a kid in a Skyline High football jersey. Then they saw the note on the dining table, written in red marker, jagged and rushed. We heard them in the street. They won't let us leave. We refuse to become like them. Please forgive us. They found them in the garage. 4 bodies, lined up neatly in camping chairs, plastic bags over their heads. Propane tanks beside them. Rachel stepped out into the yard and doubled over, dry heaving. Logan looked away. Hawthorne only whispered, God damn. The third house gave them a brief moment of relief. The pantry had canned goods, mostly fruit and vegetables, but enough to justify the wait. A water cooler stood in the hallway, half full and untouched. Logan found a toolbox with sealed batteries and a clean hatchet. Rachel discovered unopened first aid kits in the upstairs linen closet. This one must have been preppers, she said. They just didn't make it long enough. They were packing the supplies into their bags when they heard it, scratching from a door down the hallway. Then a low, dragging moan. Logan raised his pistol. Rachel stepped back. Hawthorne tilted his head. It's coming from the back room. They approached slowly. The door was locked from the outside. 2 deadbolts and a chair jammed against the knob. A handprint was smeared across the frame, smaller than an adult's. Logan turned to Rachel. Get ready! He yanked the door open fast. Inside was a child's bedroom. Posters of superheroes on the wall, a tiny plastic kitchen in one corner, crayon drawings littering the floor, and 4 children, or what was left of them. 2 girls, 2 boys, maybe between 5 and 11. Their skin was pale, lips blackened, eyes dead and glossy. One wore a princess costume, now stained and torn. Another had a baseball glove hanging from one hand. They jerked when the door opened, silent, hungry, and fast. They launched toward the entrance. Rachel slammed the door shut with a sob. Logan caught it and bolted it shut again. His hands trembled. No one spoke. They stood in the hallway, the sounds of tiny fists pounding against the wood filling the air. One of them started clawing at the window beside the door. The glass didn't give. Hawthorne stepped forward and turned the bolt tighter. We're not ready for that. Rachel wiped her eyes. Logan's voice was gravel. We don't talk about this again. They left the house. Behind them, the thudding and scratching followed them all the way to the street. 2 more homes. One had a zombie trapped beneath a fallen dresser. Its spine snapped, legs useless, it still snarled and reached. Hawthorne crushed its skull with a crowbar. Another was burned out from the inside. Charred bones in the hallway, the fire long since cold. But it wasn't until they reached a house near the edge of South Holmes Avenue that trouble finally found them. Rachel opened the door. Instantly, the stench hit them. Fresh blood, rot, and something feral. A zombie bolted from the hall, a woman in a tattered red bathrobe, hair wild, jaw broken wide open. She wasn't shambling, she was sprinting. Rachel fired. The blast echoed like thunder. The thing collapsed in a twitching heap, and then, like pulling a plug on hell, every zombie within 4 blocks knew exactly where they were. Move! Logan yelled. They sprinted to the Jeep, bags slamming against their backs. From every corner of the neighborhood, shapes began to appear, crawling, stumbling, running. They weren't shambling anymore. The hunger was driving them faster. They tore out of the cul-de-sac as a crowd formed behind them. One zombie jumped at the passenger side. its arm hooked through the open window. Rachel screamed and beat it with her rifle. Hawthorne leaned out and slashed with his knife, severing its arm at the elbow. It dropped. They didn't stop until the junkyard gate closed behind them, Logan's arms shaking at the wheel. Inside, they collapsed against the ground, breathing hard. Hawthorne sat in silence for a long time. Then he looked up at Logan. "Next time," he said, "we don't open any more goddamn doors." Chapter 7. Things We Don't Talk About. The junkyard was quiet, too quiet. Wind scraped across the walls of Graves Auto Salvage, sending loose tarps fluttering and metal siding creaking in the darkness. There hadn't been a supply run in 3 days. No one spoke much anymore. Inside the garage, Rachel sat on a pile of tires, absent-mindedly cleaning the same section of her rifle over and over. Logan sat by the cold fire barrel, staring into nothing. Hawthorne was somewhere along the fence line, walking the perimeter. Again. Sleep had stopped coming. Rachel hadn't closed her eyes since the house with the kids. Every time she drifted off, she saw them, the little faces behind that door, their tiny fists pounding against the wood. She tried to eat, couldn't. Tried to talk, couldn't. Logan found her one night, sitting in the darkened office, tears slipping down her cheeks in silence. "You've got to rest sometime," he said. "If I sleep, I hear them," she whispered. Logan looked away. He heard them too. Hawthorne had grown quieter. He didn't tell stories about the mountains anymore. No more bad jokes. Just long hours by the fence, sharpening his knife until the edge glinted in the moonlight. Logan watched him from the rooftop. "You're gonna cut clean through that blade." Hawthorne didn't look up. "It's the noise. When I stop, I hear everything else." He paused, scanning the fields beyond the barbed wire. "They're not wandering anymore. They're circling." "Circling?" "Yeah, testing us. They know we're in here." Logan swallowed hard. He wanted to tell him he was wrong, but he wasn't. Sleep, when it came, was violent. Logan woke one night with his hands wrapped around Rachel's throat. She gasped, shoving him off. They stared at each other, breathing hard. "I thought you were one of them," Logan whispered. Rachel wiped her mouth, turned away, and didn't say a word. The walls started playing tricks on them. Rachel swore she saw someone walking between the wrecked cars. Hawthorne claimed he heard children laughing outside the fence. Logan heard his dead brother's voice on the wind. None of them spoke about it. One morning, the hammer was gone. Logan tore through the junkyard looking for it. He found it hours later, outside the east fence, half buried in the dirt. Someone had gone out. He confronted Hawthorne first. "You leave the yard?" "No." "Don't lie." "I didn't leave." Rachel appeared from the shadows. "It was me." They both turned. She stood pale and still, rifle dangling at her side. "I heard my brother last night, calling my name. I know he's dead, but it sounded like him. I went to look." "You could have been killed," Logan said. "I didn't care." She sat down on the cold cement floor and put her head in her hands. And for the first time since this all began, she broke. That night, they sat together for the first time in days. No fire, no food, just silence. Logan finally spoke. "We can't stay here forever." Rachel looked up. "This is the only safe place left." Hawthorne shook his head. "Safe's just an illusion we built out of scrap metal and fear." Logan leaned forward. "There's gotta be something beyond Idaho Falls, somewhere where people are rebuilding. Cities, safe zones. We stay here, we rot. Out there, we've got a chance." Silence again. Then Rachel whispered, "I'm tired of hiding." Hawthorne gave a tired smile. "About damn time." That night, the pounding on the fence started again. But this time, they didn't flinch. They packed their bags by lantern light. Tomorrow, they'd leave Idaho Falls behind. And whatever waited on the horizon, they'd meet it together. Chapter 8. Echoes of the Living. The road back into Ammon felt wrong from the start. Gray skies stretched above them like cracked concrete. The streets were quiet, too quiet, lined with hollow buildings, abandoned cars, and memories turned sour. Logan drove without speaking, the Jeep rattling beneath them, each turn pulling them deeper into the city's bones. They weren't looking for trouble today, just supplies, food, antibiotics, maybe fuel, maybe hope. But trouble was waiting. They followed the cracked pavement past Taylor Crossing, the air thick with the smell of old smoke. A battered sign taped to a stoplight fluttered in the wind. "Survivors, safe camp ahead." It was handwritten, sloppy, desperate. Rachel leaned forward. "You think it's real?" "Only one way to find out," Logan muttered. They found the camp just before noon, or what was left of it. A ragged chain-link fence hung twisted in the dirt, barely holding its shape. Scattered tents sagged in the breeze, shredded tarps snapping in the wind. Blood painted the gravel in long, lazy strokes. Piles of abandoned backpacks and overturned coolers sat forgotten beneath the stormy sky. And the bodies, dozens of them, strewn across the parking lot like broken toys. Some torn apart, others missing faces or limbs. A few were still twitching, jawbones snapping at empty air. Rachel froze. "Oh my God!" Logan scanned the area, his stomach turning. Hawthorne muttered, "It wasn't raiders." "No," Logan agreed. "This was something else." In the center of the wreckage they found him, a lone survivor, barely alive. He sat against an overturned supply crate, his stomach torn open, one arm missing below the elbow. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. Logan knelt beside him. "What happened here?" The man coughed, voice ragged. They came out of the trees. We thought they were kids. We tried to help them." Rachel went cold. "What did you say?" "Kids," the man whispered. "Little kids, laughing, screaming. They tore us apart. We didn't stand a chance." Rachel staggered backward, rifle shaking in her hands. No, it can't be." Logan knew before they saw them. A noise came from the far side of the lot. Tiny footsteps, high-pitched moans. Then they appeared. 4 children. The same ones from the locked bedroom. The princess dress, the baseball glove, the superhero pajamas. Their mouths were stained red. Their little hands still clutched scraps of what they'd been feeding on. The smallest one, maybe 5 years old, dragged a severed arm behind her like a doll. Rachel collapsed to her knees. "We left them alive," she whispered. "We locked the door. We thought it was mercy." "They found a way out," Hawthorne said grimly. The children turned toward them, silent, watching, and then they started walking forward. Rachel raised her rifle. Logan stepped in front of her, hand on the barrel. "You sure you want to do this?" She wiped her eyes, jaw clenched tight. "Yes." She fired once, then again, and again, until the moaning stopped, until only silence remained. The wind carried the smell of death away. Logan helped her to her feet. She was shaking but standing. Hawthorne knelt beside the dying man. He was already gone. No prayers, no time. They burned the camp, every last tent, every last scrap of what had been hope. The fire burned hot and bitter. That night back at the junkyard, none of them spoke. They sat by the cold fire pit, listening to the crackling wind, each of them carrying the weight of what they'd done and what they hadn't. Rachel finally broke the silence. "Every decision we make in this world, it costs something." Logan nodded. "We just have to decide if the cost is worth it." They sat together until the sky turned black and the dead outside faded back into the dark. Tomorrow they would leave, because there was nothing left here but ghosts. Chapter 9. The Road Beyond the Wire. The junkyard was no longer a home. It was a tomb. Every rusted car, every patched hole in the fence, every tool left lying on the bench reminded them of the screams they couldn't forget. The children they had tried to save by locking them away. The camp they found too late. Rachel stared at the walls of Graves Auto Salvage, as if seeing them for the first time. Logan packed the last of the ammo into his duffel bag. Hawthorne stood at the gate, his face unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. No one had said it out loud yet, but they all knew. They couldn't stay here. They gathered by the Jeep at dawn. Rachel spoke first. "Where do we go?" Logan wiped oil from his hands. "Pocatello, maybe Boise. Hell, even Utah. Anywhere but here." Hawthorne checked his rifle. "Highways are suicide. Stick to the back roads. Follow the old irrigation lines south until we hit open country." Rachel looked back at the yard. We built something here. We survived here, Logan corrected. That's all. She didn't argue. They fired up the Jeep and drove straight through the gate, engines roaring. Noise didn't matter anymore. They weren't coming back. They crossed through Ammon, past the burned-out Walgreens where Rachel used to work, past the grocery stores they'd looted, past the houses where they found horrors behind every door. And for the first time in weeks, they didn't stop to scavenge. There was nothing left worth finding. On the outskirts of Shelley, they found the road surprisingly clear. Signs of life, gardens overgrown, swing sets still swaying in the wind. But no bodies, no infected, only quiet. Think people made it out? Rachel asked. Logan squinted at the horizon. Or they never had the chance. They drove all day. The Jeep coughed, rattled, burned through fuel. They stopped once in a small farming town, no bigger than a post office and 2 streets. Found a truck with a full tank and swapped vehicles, leaving the Jeep behind like a skin they no longer needed. They ate canned peaches in silence by the roadside, slept in shifts beneath the stars, wrapped in blankets and guilt. On the 3rd day they saw it, a wooden sign half hidden by weeds. Welcome to Echo Ridge, established. Ayrıtı torlayıtı. Rachel leaned forward, hope stirring painfully in her chest. Echo Ridge? Logan slowed the truck, scanning the empty streets. Could be nothing. Could be something, Hawthorne said. Smoke drifted from a single chimney. Then they saw movement. A woman appeared from behind a rusted pickup, rifle slung across her shoulder, lantern in hand. She didn't aim. She didn't run. She waved them forward. Logan stopped the truck and stepped out, hands up. Friendly, he called. The woman studied them. Hard eyes, gray hair tied back, wearing work boots and a tool belt. If you're sick, keep driving. If you're clean, welcome to Echo Ridge. She led them through town. Rooftop gardens, rain barrels, solar panels. Children played behind wire fences. Men and women repaired fences, baked bread, tended small fields. Everyone worked. Everyone watched. It wasn't much, but it was alive. They learned her name was Marion. She had founded the town with 8 people. Now it was 42 strong. No military, no rescue, just survivors. You want to stay? Marion said. Everyone earns their keep. No freeloaders. No hiding in basements waiting to be saved. Rachel didn't hesitate. We'll earn it. Marion smiled softly. Then you've got a home. That night, they slept in real beds. For the first time in what felt like forever, no screams followed them into their dreams. Logan sat beneath a string of solar lights, watching the wind roll across the distant hills. Rachel joined him, arms wrapped around her knees. You think we'll ever stop running? She asked. Logan smiled, tired but real. We just did. Chapter 10, A Place Called Echo. The sun rose soft over Echo Ridge. Not burning, not choking behind smoke like Idaho Falls, just warm and steady, casting gold across the rooftops and gardens. Logan sat on the porch of the town hall, watching life return to the world in quiet, simple ways. Children watered plants from plastic buckets. A man patched the wheel of a bicycle. 2 women hung laundry on a rope stretched between houses, talking softly. It wasn't survival anymore. It was living. Marion, the town's leader, walked up beside him carrying a tin cup of coffee. Feels weird, doesn't it? She asked. What does? Peace. Logan gave her a tired smile. Can't remember what it felt like. Marion sat beside him, gazing at the street. Most people who find this place don't believe it's real at first. They think it's a trap or a dream. You'll stop flinching eventually. Logan wasn't sure he ever would, but for now he let himself believe. Rachel found work fast. The town's clinic needed help cataloging medicine and treating minor wounds. It wasn't Walgreens, but it was helping people. She smiled again. Not often, not fully, but it was a start. At night, she helped Marion inventory the food stores, plan guard shifts, and teach first aid to teenagers who'd never held a rifle before the world ended. Hawthorne became a teacher in his own way. He built new garden beds with salvaged lumber and taught kids how to set rabbit snares beyond the eastern ridge. He still walked the perimeter each night, knife in hand. But now it was out of habit, not fear. They were each given a job, a purpose. And in Echo Ridge, purpose meant survival. Weeks passed. The nightmares faded. The guilt, though, that never left completely. Some nights Rachel still woke up, hearing tiny fists pounding against a bedroom door. Logan still dreamed of Idaho Falls burning behind them. Hawthorne still watched the tree line for shadows that never came. But in the daylight, they built something better, together. One afternoon, as Logan wired a solar panel onto the church roof, he caught sight of a new group arriving at the gates. Dusty, exhausted, but alive. They were greeted with smiles and handshakes, clean water and warm food. Rachel stood at the fence, watching them enter. "That used to be us," she whispered. Logan nodded. "But now we're the ones opening the gates." That night, the town gathered around a fire in the square. No one spoke of the dead, only of what came next. Hawthorne played a tune on an old harmonica, off-key and perfect. Marion read from a weathered journal filled with plans for planting wheat in the spring. Rachel laughed softly at something a child said, and Logan looked up at the stars for the first time in weeks and didn't feel alone. The world wasn't fixed. The dead still roamed the roads beyond the fence. But inside Echo Ridge, for the first time since the outbreak began, there was hope. And for now, that was enough.